Hello. In this video I wanted to talk about the props of disability. That might sound like a strange subject, but when you become disabled there's suddenly things that you need in order to get around and to survive that you didn't need when you were completely able-bodied. For me, one of the very first things that I needed was my trusty walking stick, um, uh, because my walking became so bad that I could no longer walk totally unaided. So I had to get over this huge barrier of using a walking stick. And it's strange because we tend to associate walking sticks with old people and weakness, and in a way having to use a walking stick, unless you've broken your leg or something, suggests in some way that you are perhaps weaker, or whatever way. Perhaps it's a male thing, I don't know, but it was quite difficult, that initial first few times of using this particular prop. And yet in some ways now it's quite helpful, because at least people can see that there's something wrong, and as you can see from my involuntary movements, it's quite helpful sometimes. And there are times when my head flies back and it can look as if I'm gesturing to someone, especially if I'm smiling, and having a walking stick in my hand sort of helps them to see that perhaps there's something wrong, and there's another reason for the movement. So in that sense it's quite helpful. It's also quite helpful that people can see that that there's something wrong, because sometimes it can be ME can be quite an invisible type of illness, although with the involuntary movements I get and the other problems, it is quite obvious, I think, to most people there's something wrong with me. So that was the first prop that was given to me. And then a little later, because my walking deteriorated so badly, I got the next one, which an uncle of mine, who heard that I was struggling to get around, decided to very kindly buy me an electric scooter, so that I could at least get out of the house. And again, it's another thing that you sort of associate with age, and a quite difficult thing at first to get on it and to go out and to be seen around by people that you know, because it's like an admittance of something wrong. And I don't know, perhaps there is stigma still in our society about being disabled, and I've worked with disabled people for a number of years, and I've always been aware of it, but never quite so aware of it now, since I have become disabled by ME. But these props are so important, and it's so important to overcome that fear and that pride, if you like, so that you can try to at least continue a normal life. And then this week another prop was added, and it's one that I'm going to struggle with more than anything else. And we just taken delivery of a wheelchair for me to use when we're going out, because although I can get around locally, if I want to go off to a nearby town, there's no way we can load my scooter in it. So there's very few places that we can actually go. So in many ways my life and that of my wife and family is quite limited, and for me being able to be involved in things. I mean, we live quite near the sea, but I can't walk along the seafront because it wouldn't be long before my legs would stiffen up so badly, and I would be feeling so ill that I would be in problems. So I now got to get used to the idea of having a wheelchair, but not only having a wheelchair, but also the idea of my wife having to push me. And I'm not a small guy. Perhaps it is a bloke thing. I'd have no problem if I was having to push my wife, but the idea of having my wife pushing me is quite difficult to get my head around, because I'm concerned for her, and and for the effect that it will have on her. And there is also this pride thing. You know, men are supposed to be the strong ones, and it's very much a social thing that we're socialised into thinking. And when weakness comes, it's quite difficult to admit. But in the end, these props that are provided are so necessary if we want to continue at least a normal life. If I don't get over this and don't use the wheelchair, then I will not be able to go it very many places. If I didn't use my walking stick, I wouldn't be able to walk the short distance I can walk. If I didn't use my scooter, I would be stuck indoors day after day, couldn't even go to the shops. But at least with these props that we're given, we can get around. But it's just getting over that social stigma, which perhaps is more in my mind than it is on those who see me. But admitting weakness is not easy, and perhaps for some silly reason it's even more difficult for us blokes who have to try to look as if everything's okay. So that's what this video is about. About the props of disability. Use them. I mean, if there's no other use for this, it's always useful for for bashing any kids over the head who decide to get stroppy. No, but use those props that are provided and try to overcome the feeling of difference that they actually make.